don't know. I think we're live. I really do. I think we're here. We're alive and well. Welcome to the big show. It's your buddy Bruce here with Traveling with Bruce, right from live from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. How are you today? Welcome all to the you know, Monday night kind of hangout show that I like to do. It's great to see you. I hope you had a great week. It's been 1 week plus since Thanksgiving, so everyone should have digested by now. I know I'm feeling a lot better. I'm doing great. Went to Costco today. They've got pumpkin pie for Christmas now here in Canada. Bought another pumpkin pie. It's all good. I love it. All is well. So I was thinking today, what am I going to talk about for today's show? And I thought, I really don't want to bum you out with any lousy cruise stories or travel stories because that's just not what I want to do. I don't want to disappoint you or, bring you into a funk. We're coming up to Christmas holiday time, good times. So I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something I've never done before on this show called Traveling with Bruce. I've never talked to you about my hometown, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I've never said anything about this city all that much. I occasionally mention it, but I bet you there are people who watch me around the world who are saying, "Hey, what's it like where you are?" I mean, you travel, Bruce, all the time. You and Jen are taking off out of Calgary January the 1st, and you're heading to California for 5 months. This past summer, you took a 70-day trip that took you to New York on the Queen Mary 2 ocean liner over to Southampton. You went all around the Scottish Isles for another 12-day cruise. You're in London for 2 weeks. You did videos about it. You went to Switzerland, to Zermatt, where this 3rd year in a row you've gone there. You really love it. Stopped in Hamburg on the way home and then grabbed the Queen Mary 2 from Hamburg all the way to New York. Did a meet and greet with folks in London and in New York. That was one hell of a 70-day trip. But you live in Calgary, Alberta, which is actually a tourist town in a way. It's a big tourist town. You never talk about it. So I thought tonight is the night that I'm going to tell you a little bit about Calgary and my hometown and give you a little bit of info here, a little info there. I've kind of put a hodgepodge of photos together that I've just downloaded from, Google stuff. And I'll explain a little bit about the history of this place and the area we are here in Western Canada. It's absolutely beautiful. It's gorgeous. And we have tourists that come here from Europe every summer and winter. Right now, people that are arriving here in the wintertime, they're here because they're going to go skiing in the mountains, which is an hour away by car. People who come here in the summertime are doing it all. There are literally Europeans landing at the Calgary International Airport, heading to with a cab ride or an Uber ride, going to a local RV rental place where they have set up with an online rental 4 or 6 week, for example, up to a 6-week rental to take a Class C motorhome. That can sleep 6 people if you want. Great for 2, great for a family of 4, whatever. And they go and pick up a Class C motorhome that is already pre-loaded, turnkey, ready to go. It has literally got in the refrigerator enough groceries to start for a week. The booze you want is in there. Your blankets and pillows and dishes and towels and detergents and everything is in there. You get to the place and they immediately sign in, check in, and get a look at the rig and are shown all the nuances of the rig and are given an 800 phone number for any emergency calls. They're handed the keys, they get in and they drive west if they're heading out right away, or they're heading around here for a bit, and they're heading through Western Canada, and they'll do Western Canada for a month. They might drive all the way to Vancouver Island. You got to take a ferry from the mainland to Vancouver Island, but you get my drift. And then they come back or they drop the rig off in Vancouver and they fly home back to Germany or Amsterdam or London from Vancouver. One hell of a way to go. These rigs are everywhere in the summertime out west. We have these rental RVs all over the place. So we are tourist central for a lot of people from the U.S. and from South America, from Europe, from Asia. We have a lot of tourists that come here. Anyway, so there's a little thing for you. So let me tell you a little bit about my hometown. Let me show you a couple of things about, Canada. First of all, here's a map of, Canada. I mean, it's a big place. I'll put myself down here. I don't know how clear this is for you. It might be a bit blurry, but where I am here, if you go, you go there, right there. Where it's colored in yellow, that first area is that province is called British Columbia, and the next province over is Alberta, and that's where I am. I'm in Alberta. I'm in southern Alberta, and if you zoom in on this map a little bit, you can see British Columbia there in pink, and then you can see Alberta. Let me see if I do this right. Where's my hand? My hand is here. This direction. Okay. So first you got British Columbia, and then you got Alberta, then you got Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So Alberta is in yellow, and we're in the southern part of Alberta. We're right down here, Calgary. Can you see it down there? It's just in tiny little type. Sorry. The middle of the province, not even quite the middle, is Edmonton, and that is the largest city, the only city of 1 million plus people as far north as that is on the entire planet of the Earth. There is no city with 1 million people further north than Edmonton, Alberta, by the way. We're 180 miles south of Edmonton, and we're about 150 miles north of the U.S. border, which is the 45th parallel down below. Now, Alberta and British Columbia, I'm showing you here is British Columbia. If you take a peek here, this direction, right up here, there's this long island off the coast of British Columbia in pink there. That's called Vancouver Island. And at the tip of Vancouver Island, near the bottom, is a city known as Victoria, named after Queen Victoria from England, okay, the Victorian era. And back in the day, in 1867 and earlier times, Canada was formed by a group of guys. We call these guys the Fathers of Confederation. And they met many a time over months to try to form a union of Canada from east to west. And by the time these gentlemen met, and the gentleman I'm thinking of the most right now is the one standing in the middle of the photograph with the window perfectly centered behind him. You see that guy? That's a gentleman named Sir John A. Macdonald, and he was Canada's first prime minister. This guy was a crafty politician, and along with many others, and he helped forge what was at one time the original Dominion of Canada, which took place, or which encompassed, if you go back to the Canadian map here, the far east. So go way over to the right, and you'll see Halifax, like Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, and Ontario. Those provinces formed the early part of Canada. And then Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia joined later. But certainly John A. Macdonald had to figure out a way to entice the folks from Victoria, a city on Vancouver Island, separated by 1,500, 2,000 miles of land between Canada and Victoria's residents. How can we get British Columbia into Canada to join? And the deal was struck that in about 1870, 75 or so, a deal was made that this machine right here, this contraption you're looking at with the cow catcher in front there, it's called a locomotive, folks. There would be a rail line built across the country from coast to coast, linking the residents of British Columbia to the rest of Canada by a ribbon of steel. And that would convince the folks in British Columbia to join the rest of Canada. And Sir John A. was the politician in charge who wanted to cut this deal. And he ended up, after a number of false starts and all kinds of political scandals, the country of Canada eventually agreed to help subsidize the cost of a rail line across the country. And that is how this city was created. This city of Calgary, which looks like this now, if you take an aerial shot of my hometown, there are the Rockies behind us, about an hour away by car. We have the mighty Bow River coming through town here. And you'll notice that the river starts way back towards the back of the boat. There's a couple of bridges there. Then there's an island in front of us here, but it rejoins again and keeps right on going. But on the left, you might notice there's a little tiny, looks like a creek coming into the Bow River. This is called the Bow River, but the little creek coming in, that is not a creek. That is the Elbow River. And she's coming into the Bow, and they both flow underneath us from the west to the east and continue on its way. This water comes from the mountains that you see in the background. Those are the Rockies behind us to the west of Calgary. To the east of Calgary are flatlands known as the prairies. And if I believe this photo here, I'll show you this one. This is another shot, don't mind me. This is another shot of the Bow River with the Elbow River coming in to it. And let me see if I can shoot another photo for you. No, not that one, Bruce. Where are you? Don't mind me. I got a bunch of photos, so you just hang tough. This one is looking south. This one is looking northwest. Somewhere I have a really neat photo. At least I thought I had. Maybe I have lost it. In any event, I wanted to show you the other direction of Calgary. Nonetheless, let's go back to this shot first. This is the modern day shot of Calgary. And the downtown core, as you can see, is where all the skyscrapers are. Today, Calgary is home to the Canadian oil and gas industry. Almost every corporate office for the probably 1,500 oil and gas companies that are listed here. At one time it was 900. I'm sure it's 1,500 by now. The head offices of most of the oil and gas companies are right here in downtown Calgary. A lot of office workers here, a lot of engineers here, landmen, geologists, you name it. You might notice that red and white looking tower in the downtown core to the left. That's the Calgary Tower. That used to be the tallest structure in this city in the city in 1960-61 until about 1975. It was the tallest structure in this area. And you'll also maybe notice if you look at the bottom of the tower, just off to the left, you'll see rail lines, lots and lots of railroad lines there. And that is a hint as to how this town was originally created. Again, this another shot here. You see the tower, Calgary Tower, standing way out there. And this is the downtown core. And then over to the far left, brand new condos that have gone up in the last 10, 15 years. Condominiums that are anywhere from 30 to 50 stories tall are now popping up just south of the downtown core, because this city has gone from, when I moved here in 1977, 450,000 people to now 1,100,000 or more. So this town has had a lot of growth. This right here is what made Calgary what it is and what it originally became. The railroad. It came right through the center of Calgary's area here and has kept right on going into the mountains. And it brings in, and goods pass through here all the time, both directions, from the west to the east and the east to the west, including grain and coal and sulfur and you name it, anything you can imagine. Agriculture, all the wheat, all the barley, all the corn, everything that's grown around here comes through Calgary. In the early days, this was the area where the Calgary Tower is now. This is the Palliser Hotel, the original first skyscraper of any note. This photo is taken from the top of another skyscraper, which is on the bottom left. And this is shortly after the building was finished, about 20 years in. You can see the old Model T standing in front of the hotel there. And just at the end of that hotel, down the road a bit, is the original station, rail station. This shot here is the back of the hotel with the rail lines. And we had passenger rail cars and cargo rail cars going through here. The CPR, Canadian Pacific Railroad Station, was right beside the Palliser Hotel. Today, this is what the Palliser Hotel looks like. She's still there. She's still there to this very day with the Calgary Tower behind her. The station is long gone. The actual passenger station is really not there anymore. It's now skyscrapers and office buildings because public rail travel for passenger service stopped in the 80s, and now it's all by car and by air to get around these parts. Here's a shot of Calgary from the skyline in the 50s. And if you look at the rail line, you can see all the rail lines going right by where what you see those skyscrapers were. The biggest building, there's a big square block building. That's the Palliser Hotel. You're looking at the back of the Palliser with the rail lines behind her. And south, or to the left of the rail lines were some warehouses. And then south of that were residential homes. North of the rail line was downtown, and some residential homes up until the Bow River that snaked its way back west, or you can see it coming from the west to the east. But we are looking west, and you can barely make out the mountains in the background on this particular shot. Here is a shot of downtown Calgary not too long ago, probably in the last few years, where the Calgary Tower is standing there and the Palliser Hotel is at the foot of the tower just to the left. That square block, that's the Palliser Hotel. And across the street of Palliser is about a 35-foot story with a white cap on it. That used to be known as the Palliser Square. And a thing about the interesting fact about the rail line going across the country, the Canadian Pacific Railway was given a contract by the government of Canada that stated that for every 20 miles that the rail line ran across the country, including telegraph line, the CPR would have the rights to the telegraph line, so they could charge whatever they wanted to get messages across the wire. They would also be able to charge whatever they wanted on the rail line itself. And for every 20 miles they completed, they would get a certain amount of land from the government of Canada on the north side and the south side on the line all along the route. And in downtown Calgary, this photo here, the Palliser Hotel is on CPR land, the original CPR land. Across the street, that 35-story building with the white cap on it, just beside to the very immediate left of the Calgary Tower there, Palliser building, that is CPR land. The tower is on CPR land. The office building to the right of the tower looks like a very square, rectangular-looking 25-story building. That is also sitting on CPR land. And across the street from it, there's a little park, and then there's a kind of a blue-colored, gray-colored building. It's only about 10 stories high. That is Canada Pacific land as well. All the rail line going through is CPR, and on both sides of the rail line is also CPR land. They owned it all. And this allowed the railroad over time to cash in money to pay off their bondholders. Because when they originally built the CPR line across the country, the railroad had to borrow money from banks. The government backed the loans to a degree, but the rail line, as they expanded from east to the west, they would expand their business footprint, and they would start hauling goods and services on the line as it was completed. The problem with the CPR line out of Ontario to Manitoba and ultimately to the west was there was no connection between Toronto, the big city of Toronto, and Winnipeg. And that was not completed until the very end of the line in and around 1884. This all started in the 1870s, and it cost a veritable fortune. It almost bankrupted the entire country to produce this rail line. Every trick in the book was used to find ways to stretch dollars, to find ways to get suppliers to give goods and services on credit to the rail line. They would extend them 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, 180-day extensions, because they also knew they would be paid eventually when the line was done. The problem was, would they go broke before the line got finished? before they could get paid for the work that they were doing and what they were supplying for the railroad. A gentleman that was hired by the rail line to make this happen was a guy named William Cornelius Van Horn. And I want to see if I have a photo of this man. I do. I have a photo of William Cornelius Van Horn. This gentleman, without this gentleman, Calgary would not have existed. This is, in 1905, a photo of William Cornelius Van Horn. Now, this gentleman is from the United States. This is an American. And it was controversial that an American man was hired to build the National Railway of Canada. That was a big political thing. But his reputation preceded himself. He was a master general manager and knew every aspect of railwaying. He also knew Morse code. And he could talk to you and listen to someone clicking Morse code over there and not miss a beat with you and not miss a beat with what was being said over there. This guy knew everything about the railroad. He would conduct business from his office where he would be clicking Morse code instructions to the rail workers down the line while he's talking to you about what he wanted you to do for lunch today or how to prepare a steak or whatever. He had a voracious appetite. He was a portly gentleman, but he was incredibly successful. And he was immortalized a few years ago. Here, there was a statue built in his honor at the Banff Springs Hotel in Banff, because he had figured something out that other railway people hadn't quite figured out. And that was the scenery that the rail line was going to go through Western Canada was so stunning. This is a picture of the Banff Springs Hotel in Banff, Alberta. He figured out, you know what we should do? We can't export the scenery of Western Canada. We can't export it. Why don't we import the tourists? And so this gentleman made sure that there was a hotel built in downtown Calgary, the Palliser Hotel. There was a hotel built in, here's the Palliser here. He made sure that there was a hotel built in Banff, Alberta, which is the Banff Springs Hotel. Look at this place. Talk about a castle-like structure. It runs to this very day. And then he decided, we're also going to build a hotel in Lake Louise. We're going to build a hotel here in Lake Louise, Alberta, which is about an hour and a half out of Calgary. And on top of that, we're going to build a hotel in a place called Rogers Pass. And we're going to build this place right here, the Glacier House. Now, there are only black and white photos of this place because it didn't last long, but I'll tell you a story about this in a minute. The thing about Mr. William Cornelius Van Horn is that he was famous for his appetite, and he was a stickler for quality food. And he knew that if he was going to build a railroad in the middle of bloody nowhere and in Western Canada where there were no roads, no electricity, no communication whatsoever, Indian tribes, buffalo, and bison. You're going to build a railway line through Western Canada all the way to Vancouver. You're going to have to feed your men well. And his thinking was a well-fed crew is much more loyal to an employer than a not well-fed crew of workers. And so this guy made sure that the food the workers got were of the same quality and caliber that he got, and heads would roll if it wasn't done so. He also figured out that once Calgary was established and was opened up, like here, you needed to have a hotel in downtown Calgary that was owned by the CPR, which was the Palliser Hotel. That's the biggest building right on the rail line. And the quality of the accommodations and the quality of the food directly reflected the quality of the rail line. And this gentleman insisted that the dining cars on board the rail line for the CPR were of the best quality. The food served on board the trains of the Canadian Pacific Railroad, coast to coast, was of the highest caliber, and that the hotel service would be of the highest caliber. And so there would be never a question if a business person was told by the bosses in Montreal or Toronto, we need you to go on a business trip across the country, all the way to Vancouver and Victoria, to do business in various cities across the country. The businessmen knew that they would be able to stay in top flight accommodations along the way to do business. So in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in Regina, Saskatchewan, in Calgary, Alberta, in Banff, Lake Louise, Vancouver, you had hotels run by the CPR of the finest magnitude. Now, if you're a tourist, you're coming into Canada from England or Germany or Italy or anywhere, and you want to travel across the country back in the day, like when this photo was taken, the same thing. You could not only come to Calgary and be treated to the finest of accommodations. This hotel had elevators. This hotel had refrigerators. This hotel had the best of the best. As soon as air conditioning was ready, this hotel was air conditioned. It was completely, constantly modernized. But not only that, in Lake Louise, the hotel here was of the highest caliber, the top-notch food with the views to die for. This is a view not far from your hotel window. You think that people weren't taking photos of this and sending it back to their friends or buying postcards with these images on it? To this very day today, you can come here and get on a canoe and head out on this lake and see it for yourself. Now, back in the day, I was telling you earlier, the rail line went through a place known as Rogers Pass. Now, to get to Rogers Pass, you had to get through the spiral tunnels. And here's an image of the early image of a spiral tunnel. And if you look up at the top of the photo right here, at the very top here, you see the rail line coming down to us. And at the bottom right, there's a loop underneath there. That's under the mountain. It comes back out of the mountain and goes in the other side of the valley into the mountain over there and comes out the other side there. These are known as the spiral tunnels. And here is a train coming out of the tunnel on the top and going into the tunnel on the bottom. You can see how that looks there. It's a spectacular sight. You can see it off the highway. Now, on the top of a place known as Rogers Pass, one of the most unforgiving places in the Rocky Mountains, the rail line decided that they would build a rail line right over top of Rogers Pass. And for 20 years, 30 years, they ran the line up here. And they needed to hire year-round, certainly 10 months of the year, guys to keep the line clear from snow. Now, in the dead of summer, it was gorgeous. It was absolutely beautiful up here. No problem, no snow. There was green meadows and beautiful grass and everything else. But what they did here in the early days was to get the train and trains up to the top of Rogers Pass because the grade was so severe. They had to have locomotives at the front of the train, and they would add locomotives at the back of the train to push it up and to use brakes on the way down on the other side. Now, what they would do with passenger trains and freight trains, very heavy, of course. What they would do is they break them apart, and they would be at the bottom of the Rogers Pass. They break the train in half, and only half the train would be pushed up. And the first half of the train to go to the top would be the passenger train. And the passenger train would be brought to a place called the Glacier House, which was right here. I think I have a photo of it with the train right there. There you go. And passengers would be invited to get off the train because they're going to stay here for a few hours, because the other half of the train had to be brought up with other locomotives and would be brought over the pass to the other side of the pass down the hill. And this train would eventually join the other half of the train at the bottom of the pass to continue on to Vancouver or to Calgary, whichever direction you were going. And then at Glacier House, they built here a full-blown resort-type community, and there's a model of what it once looked like. They had guide quarters, stables, bowling alley, eventually, observation towers. They had the wing, the billiard room, the Chinese staff quarters, dining room, station, luggage room, baggage room, hotel, laundry. Everything was originally here at one time. You could spend nights here in the summer. This is only open in the summertime. They closed this off in the wintertime because wintertime, The Rogers Pass would have 20 feet of snow on the tracks, and though they were then using these guys, an army of men, hundreds of them, to keep the snow clear on top of the pass. Here's another model of what the Rogers Pass actually looked like. Vancouver is just below me here at the very bottom left. Go to Calgary, top of the photo, Rogers Pass in the middle, and you can see Glacier House off to the right-hand side. This was a spectacular place. It was an incredible place to see and a place to visit, but incredibly difficult to keep open. Today, the Glacier House is no more. The entire area that was once this fantastic getaway has been shut down. They closed it down in approximately 1915 to 1920 because by 1915, 17 or so, they built what was known as the Connaught Tunnel. They tunneled under the Rogers Pass, about 2,000 feet under the pass, to lower the line to cross the gap. Instead of the rail line going up and over the pass, it went through the mountain itself, and it didn't have to go over this extra 2,000 feet. By 1970 odd, another tunnel was built, even lower, and it was widened. And they had twin lines. They had twin or four lines across. So now, year-round, trains go under the Rogers Pass, never go over. No, there are no rail lines on top of the Rogers Pass anymore. In 1960, however, the government of Canada built the Trans-Canada Highway to go from one side of Canada to the other by car. And you can drive to the top of Rogers Pass from Calgary, if you like, or from Vancouver, or on the way to Vancouver. And you can visit the top of Rogers Pass, and it's beautiful in the summer. Winter, treacherous, because there are plows everywhere to try to keep the highway open. The snow still falls at the top of the Rogers Pass. But in the summertime, it's a fantastic place to drive through, and you can stop up there. There are there are parks there. There are observation areas, a lot of signage, history. You can visit this area, and you can come here. You can literally see the ruins of the house. There is a display area up there, a tourist display area, showing you these models to show you what was once here in the early 1900s to complete this journey. In 1885, the national CPR, the Canadian Pacific Railroad, completed the line coast to coast, and they had the last spike ceremony to drive the last spike home in a place called Craigellachie, British Columbia, which you can also visit by car now. You can literally go to this spot. The rail line is still running on this exact spot right here in Craigellachie. And the gentleman holding the hammer there, the spike, that gentleman with the big sledge, that's Lord Strathcona. Donald Smith is his name. And over to the left, you'll see two gentlemen with top hats that look kind of like Strathcona there. There's one guy with a gigantic white beard, and then there's another gentleman with a black beard and a smaller hat. That is William Cornelius Van Horn. That is this guy right here, William Cornelius Van Horn. And he stood there and watched as the spike was driven into the wood there. The gentleman holding a metal pick, and you can only see the metal pick on the left. If I go back to this older photo, first photo, you'll see the metal pick holding the stud. That gentleman, you can only see a little bit of his face behind the gentleman with the bowler hat. That's a guy named William, or Mr. What's his first name? It's Rogers. His last name is Rogers. They named the pass Rogers Pass after A.B. Rogers. That's what it was. Major A.B. Rogers discovered the Rogers Pass about 8 months, 9 months before they got there. The lines were headed to the mountains with nowhere. They didn't know where they would go over the mountain. And A.B. Rogers finally found the pass, and they quickly built the line over Rogers Pass. This is to the, I believe, to the west of Rogers Pass on the other side, after going down the hill. Most of the people in this photo are unknown. They are just the regular workers of the railroad None of them were of any importance as far as owners or shareholders. They were just $2.50 a day employees of the rail line. The longest living person on this photo after this photo was taken was the young boy you can see right behind Lord Strathcona, looking over in a funny, cocky kind of way at the camera. All these other gentlemen went along their way. They were unemployed within days of this photo being taken, because once the line was done, most of their services were no longer required. And they were then soon to be unemployed. So there you are. These are two of the most famous photographs of Canadian history, actually. And it shows you how plain and simple this was to finish the line. The reality was that their CPR, the Canadian Pacific Railway, was broke the day they drove that spike into the the rail tie. They were practically out of money. They were within days of going bankrupt. However, they were saved by an uprising by natives and Louis Riel in the prairies, and the CPR was instrumental in getting Dominion of Canada troops to the rebellion in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and the government of Canada guaranteed the company's loans to get them through the finish. The moment that last spike was nailed down, the rail line was now complete across the country. And the next year, summertime of 1886, the rail line was operational practically coast to coast. And you could now land goods by ship in Vancouver, put them on a rail car, and rail them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can ship by rail into Eastern Canada and New York and Chicago, majority of the route through CPR rail at record speeds. And you could get fresh produce from east to west, west to east in refrigerated cars, and it wouldn't go bad. It was a major change in the economic fortunes of the country and the rail line itself. And for Calgary, it meant a lot of prosperity. Calgary became a very wealthy city, and skyscrapers eventually grew up just like all other North American cities here. The population's exploded now to 1.1 million people. We have, of course, the Calgary Flames Hockey Club. We've got our football team, the Calgary Stampeders, and every year we have the Calgary Stampede, which is a big celebration of cowboy culture. Some people can't stand it because they feel that we're being cruel to the animals. Others just come out here for the greatest outdoor show on earth. It's kind of like a big old state fair. We have the big grandstand show every night. We have the chuck wagon races every night. And it's a pretty exciting time of year to be here. Just an hour away from Calgary, as I said earlier, you can come out here and come to Banff, Alberta, Canada, and you will see some of the most dramatic Rocky Mountain views you could ever imagine. You can stay at this hotel right here, the Banff Springs Hotel, and many others. It's not the only one. And you will be surrounded by this type of geography. In the wintertime, it's gorgeous. In the summertime, it's gorgeous. This is Lake Louise. It's absolutely spectacular. And tourists from around the world RV out here, hit campgrounds. Others come out to stay in hotels. Others come out to cycle, hike, fish, you name it. This is a phenomenal, phenomenal place. Western Canada, Calgary. This is a shot here of the Banff Springs Hotel with the mountain in the background. Just a generic shot. Just, you don't even have to try very hard to get great photos of this area. Absolutely stunning, to say the least. There's another shot there of the downtown Calgary skyline with the Saddle Dome there. That is where they held the Olympics in 1988. The figure skating championships and the hockey tournament was held there. The Calgary Flames play their hockey games there. That's the Stampede grounds in the foreground, or a part of the Stampede grounds, just a slight, small part of the Stampede grounds in front of us. The greatest outdoor show on earth, about 14 days long, first 2 weeks of July, usually every year. People come here for the Stampede. They come here for the hospitality. They come here to eat because we love our beef and our barbecue. We love to, there's a lot of cowboy bars here, line dancing and everything else. So there's a lot of entertainment here, a lot of art here. A lot of benefactors have donated generously back to the city that made them very, very wealthy. This is a shot from the north to the south along Center Street, looking right at the Calgary Tower, which at one time was the tallest structure in the city by far. I think when this photo was taken here, it had already been usurped by some of the other skyscrapers. But for about 20 years, the Calgary Tower was the king of the show. But time marches on, and modern technology keeps coming, and higher buildings keep getting built, and the city has matured out now to a beautiful place with the mountains in the background. If you go to the Calgary Tower, some great views from up there. Even though there are buildings taller than she is, she still commands a fantastic view from up there. You'll notice in this photo here, by the way, if you take a look at the right side of downtown where the skyscrapers sort of stop, and then look off into the distance, you'll actually notice, I don't know if you understand what that is, but that's a ski jump way down there. And that is where the Olympics were held for the ski jumping competitions and the bobsled runs. And if you remember a gentleman by the name of Eddie the Eagle from the United Kingdom, he was a ski jumper, and he jumped off of those ski jumps to the delight of millions of worldwide viewers back in 1988. That was a long time ago, far, far away for this city. But I'll tell you, in 1988, when the Olympics came to town, the Winter Olympics, this city was discovered by millions of people around the world, probably billions for the first time. And the tourism just keeps on coming. One more thing I'll talk to you about just in this photo right here. Right in the middle of the photo, before downtown, you'll see that big green patch there, huge green area where there's nothing there. It appears to be nothing there. That is sacred land. That is the original site of what was once known as Fort Calgary. And that is where, for years and years, decades, you came through here. You would end up here in the Fort Calgary area. Because that is where the RCMP were headquartered, and the intersection of the Elbow River and the Bow River is where that was. And so to this day, that land is used for concerts, historical preservation is there. There's a museum there, and that will not be developed. That land is to be kept the way it is. Very, very interesting. Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You ever get the chance to come and see us? I think you might be pleasantly pleased with the city, the area. Absolutely gorgeous area of the country, and great people out here. If you ever get a chance to come by, I recommend it. There you go. Thank you, everyone, for being here so far. Sydney, Sharon is here. Number one tonight. It's drizzly outside, but we're basking in the glow of the Mets signing Juan Soto. Annie Mon, number two, beautiful Sydney, Australia, 74 degree, no cloud, light breeze, and perfect for cruising, those lucky ones. Jeff Dinan from Melbourne, Australia is here. Good day, Bruce and TWB. Kirk Brunson. Hey, Bruce, TWB family. Kirk from the Big Apple is here. I'm working tonight. Stephen Butler. Hello, everybody. Kirk Brunson. I'm number 8 tonight. Annie Mon, 15 years on Wednesday since we visited Calgary. Interesting experience to experience. Minus 32 Celsius. Next visit was plus 28 Celsius. How about that? Steve R. Hello, Bruce. Hello, Steve. Kevin Chapman, the author himself. Thumbs up, number 9, Bruce. Happy the precipitation outside isn't snow tonight. 45 degrees Fahrenheit. You guys need rain. Definitely need rain. Thank you. Stephen Butler, number 7 on the hit parade. Gas, $2.66 a gallon here. It's cold and wet outside in northwest Arkansas. Kevin, I can see Victoria from my house. Well, my childhood house. Beautiful city. Jason Kimmons. Hello from Lakeland, Florida. It's always a pleasure watching your videos. Annie Mon, great memories for me. We were so lucky to see a freight train in the spiral tunnels, beginning and end of the train, but not the center, still in the tunnel. Sharon, we need to run. Have a great week. You too. Thank you so much for popping in. Yes, the spiral tunnels are fantastic to see. The best thing about the tunnels and Western Canada is because the Trans-Canada Highway was built basically mostly along the rail line. The railroad guys knew what they were doing. Back in the 1880s, from 1882 until 85, when they were building out there to get through the Rocky Mountains, they built on the easiest grade possible. Because they couldn't have rail cars going up 10% grades and down 10% grades. They'd run off the tracks. You had to have 1 to 2% grades. So for every 100 feet, you could only go up 100 feet, maybe 2 feet max. Now, in the summertime, it's not a big deal, but in the winter, it is a big deal because with snow on the tracks, you can't have a rail car going down 5% grade. It'll just slide right off the track. So the folks on the engineers who built the Trans-Canada Highway, they just widened the area of land around the railroad, and they had federal rights to it, and so they built the Trans-Canada Highway. So you can rent a car in Calgary, or you can drive out here if you are that adventurous, and you can then drive a car through the Rocky Mountains. You can go right here to the Kicking Horse Pass, see the spiral tunnels, and watch them from yourself. They have observation platforms that they have built, and they're perfect in the summertime. You bring your camera out and you stand and watch the rail trains coming and going through the spiral tunnels. There are places where you can turn off along the route of the rail line in the west, and you'll come up to spectacular waterfalls, phenomenal vistas, just incredible. You get a sense. You'll try to get a sense of what it was like to find a pass through the Rockies that had never been done before. The only people who had ever climbed through the Rocky Mountains ever were guides, Indian guides, and even prior to that, in the 1700s, 1600s, I don't think anyone would have been able to cross the Rockies by foot. It was literally impossible, unless you did it in July, and even then, the mosquitoes and the flies would get you, if not wild bear and who knows what. Dangerous as heck to do. Absolutely incredible. Lake Louise is an absolute gem. It's a World UNESCO site. Absolutely stunning place. Emerald Lake and all kinds of areas around it. You can golf in Banff at the Banff Springs Resort. Bring your clubs, and you'll be taking pictures every second shot. It's just to me, you're surrounded by mountains all around you. It's absolutely spectacular. You can hike, you can bike, you can camp. There is no end to it. Perfect place to bring the family, the children, to show them, the beauty of Western Canada. In Banff, they have the Banff Springs hot springs as well, and those are natural hot springs. You can visit those. You can also visit them in Radium, which is another area just in Western Canada, near Banff and Lake Louise. There's so much to see and do in the mountains, and it's a 2-hour drive from Calgary if you just do a day trip. Hard to justify only a day trip to Banff. You're better off spending 3 or 4 nights and really exploring the area. And do your homework, and a ton of YouTube videos about the area are available. Lots of videos about Calgary available. Fantastic. If you visit the sister city, Edmonton, Alberta, 180 miles north of Calgary, another 1 million person city with their own unique features. They had a rail line go through there to solidify that city, but that was the Canadian National Railway. And that was built many decades later after the CPR came through Calgary. But these large cities in Western Canada, they owe their entire existence to the railroad. The railroad was the only way through. And during the war years, the Second World War years, the CPR played a vital role to get goods and services from the Pacific to the Atlantic and vice versa. It was very important. Wheat, barley, corn, canola, beef, pork, chicken. I mean, the amount of meat grown in the West and grain grown in the West feeds the world. It's not just enough food for us here in Calgary or Alberta. Grain is exported around the world from Canada to the rest of the planet. Today, of course, we have oil and gas under our feet that we've discovered. It was discovered early in the 1920s, just south of Calgary. They found oil and gas. Then they hit the mother lode of an oil field in a place called Leduc, which is just south of Edmonton, north of Calgary. And that began the beginning of a major exploration campaign for Western Canada. And Alberta became the home of the Canadian oil and gas area. The tar sands, or the oil sands, are far north of Edmonton, to the north and to the east. They are nowhere near Calgary. There are no oil sands here whatsoever. Around Calgary are natural gas fields, but also shallow oil fields as well. And the crude that comes out is a medium mix of crude. It's not all that dirty. It requires very little refinement to turn into machine oil, or ultimately, if you need to turn it into other materials for the pharmaceutical business, the agricultural business, for fertilizer, for plastics, for you name it, oil, and for gasoline for your car, you need refineries to do that. Most of the refineries in Alberta are in the Edmonton area, because that's where most of the fields are. Edmonton is the place where you find the blue collar workers of our province, the blue collar drillers, pipeline people, refinery people. Edmonton. Calgary is the corporate office of the oil patch. And so here's where all the office workers are, and all the companies are headquartered, where all the banks are. We had our own stock exchange here. And then Edmonton is where the blue collar heavy lifting is done. And that's a little bit about Alberta history. There you go. I hope you don't mind my little show today about Calgary. If you ever get a chance to come down here or up here, you might want to check it out. Hi from Jacksonville, says Roger. Hello. Last Friday marked 1 year since Nikki's death. Sons come up from St. Augustine to spend the day with me. Thank you, Roger, again for staying with us since Nikki has left us. It is, I can't imagine the loss, but I'm so glad you're here, and we hope that you enjoy the visit with us here every week when we put up this show and talk about just, well, right now, whatever. Today it's about Calgary. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I hope I didn't bore any of you. I hope you enjoyed the little history lesson here about the railroad and Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where I live. At least I generally like to live here in the summer a lot. I don't care for it between January and May. But then at age 69, I guess, I don't have to live here in the winter anymore. I can choose to work my way to California for the winter time. But if you do come up here in the spring, summer, or fall, I think you'll find it a delightful, unique place to visit. It's truly a different city than most other Canadian cities. It is Western Canada, and they're very proud of their heritage here, the cowboy heritage, the ranch heritage, and the oil and gas heritage. It's a big deal around here. And if you do come in here the first 2 weeks of July, you will be blown away by how this city completely goes cowboy. We go completely stampede crazy around here, and it is pretty spectacular. But head to the mountains and check this out. These are just a few images of gazillions that are available that you can see on Google. You can catch on videos about this area out here. It is spectacular, and you get the chance to come out here. I think you won't be disappointed. In the meantime, I'll see you again here next Monday when we're back. I'll see if there's any new cruise news you need to know about, and we'll compare notes. I hope you've had a great day today. You're going to have a great week this week. Get ready for Christmas. It's coming, babies. It's the 9th of December now. We're getting closer to Christmas time. Have a wonderful time, everybody. Thank you, Stephen, for your comment. Thank you for the thumbs ups. If you can hit the thumbs ups, if you're watching on the rerun, help us out with thumbs ups too. Have a wonderful rest of the week, guys. See you next time. Goodbye from Calgary, Alberta.